Welcome, everybody. It's Marilyn Wilson here today, president of RE Technology and managing partner of WAV Group. I'm really excited to show you some things. Well, I'm not going to show you. Leo's going to show you some really exciting things today. But Remine Pro's really come a long way. The company's come a long way. They're doing a lot of really interesting things. So I think you're going to enjoy this today. I want to introduce everybody that's here first. I'm Marilyn Wilson, as I mentioned. We have Leo Pareja. He's the co-founder and president of Remine, with his not so newfound amazing beard. Tim Dain, who's the VP and GM of the MLS division, and many of you might know him from his days at ABOR or at Maris, or just generally causing trouble in the MLS space, which we love. And then we've got Kage, who is the CEO of Realcomp, the largest, I think by far the largest MLS in Michigan. Correct, Karen?
That is correct.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. So we're going to just kind of jump right in here. Karen is a longtime user of Remine, so she's going to give us some of her perspective from an MLS perspective. But first, we're going to have Leo, if we could just turn it over to you and give us just an overview of what Remine is. And if you can, maybe through the process, kind of explain to us the difference between Remine Pro and sort of the Remine V1, if you will, that we all might have seen when the company first launched. So take it away, Leo.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So as you mentioned, we started our journey with a product called Remine Pro Starter, which then we rolled out the Pro separately. That was an add-on to an agent's monthly spend. So we had an enterprise license at the MLS level, and then if agents so chose to, they could get the full version of the application at their own expense, which was rather expensive. It was about $199 a month. And so what that created was somewhat of a friction between ourselves and our partners, being the MLSs, because we were very efficient at selling this product, and we would call agents, do demos, and take credit cards. And what we realized as we scaled is that relationship was a little bit antagonistic, and it didn't have us on the same side of the table, if you will, with our customers. And as we matured as a product, a lot of the MLSs came to us and said, hey, you guys are now a known element. The product has the adoption we were looking for, and now we're prepared to pay for it on the enterprise side. So we do still have some of those installations still out in the marketplace. We're not actively selling that, and almost all customers have pivoted to where it's now a full enterprise solution. So very quickly, I'm not going to do a deep dive on it. I'm just going to touch on a couple of the features and functionality that evolved over time. But just a quick reminder of kind of the origin story. Jonathan, my co-founder, which most of you have met at some conference because he's pretty good at finding all of you guys, and I were actually crosstown competitors. What Remine was built for was for our own use. On any given day, he or I were going into 5 or 6 different systems, whether that's the MLS system, the public record system, the county websites, and then other forms of information gathering technology so we could track down an owner. And we thought there had to be a better way. So Remine wasn't born to disrupt anything. It was actually just born to make mine and John's business easier on a daily way of doing things. And we showed it to a couple of friends in the industry. And as they say, that the rest is history. We commercialized the product, and we were able to get some pretty good adoption across the country. So real quick, I'm logged in through Bright MLS. I'm still a dues paying member of Bright, where I sold real estate. And Remine, when you first log in, hasn't changed that much. It's just kind of the features and nuances that we've added over time based on the functions and use that we've gotten from agents. So one of the most recent release updates is that we've separated out the public record search and the MLS search with 2 buttons, so you can build out your filter search right on your search bar, whether it's for public record or listing information, and have them segmented out. That release was very recent. And as we're trying to make sure that it is a full alternative front end for folks, I'm going to jump right into the advanced tab. So that was not there in the beginning of our company's history, but advanced search was added over time as we saw a need based on our customers' wants and needs. And in this release, we've also expanded upon the listing field types. So if advanced search and having the full functioning alternative front end is of interest, this is something we can meet with your organization and then make these fields customized to exactly your wants and needs, in addition to ingesting all of the fields and RESO standards, we've done the equals to and not equals to, and really unlock the containering of the data. So whether it's equals, contains, starts with, we can make that type of experience and search on every single field. So as we were to localize an instance for somebody, that would be a great way for them to experience the application. But let me touch on a couple of the very powerful features inside of Pro. So the ability to mine for data is mostly what we're very well known for. You know, the ability to visualize and surface opportunities. An agent could segment the data as they see fit and create carts for their own prospecting needs, whether it's this very competitive environment we find ourselves into and is trying to find an opportunity that is not listed for sale, whether it's for a buyer who's been outbid multiple times or sourcing listings in this tight inventory environment. But really, whether you take a property that's public MLS or not public record, you can do all of the marketing things that are important to a property. So one feature that we're very well known for is the ability to create mailing pieces on the fly. Since we have a large audience, this is really interesting statistics. If some of the people on the phone are users, we have about 200,000 pieces of mail that go out nationwide from users across the country. So whether you're doing a just listed, just sold postcard or around a listing of yours, or you want to do a branded letter campaign to inform sellers in a neighborhood of the amount of interest in a neighborhood, you can do this in about 3 clicks. You can create a boundary based on any parameter that you'd like inside of the search bar, whether that's using a zip code, a neighborhood, a county, year built, equity, all the kind of power of harnessing of the data that you have inside of Remine, creating that localized list, and then being able to drop ship it to a fulfillment. And what we hear from agents time and time again is for a small batch of mail, meaning where you're not doing every door direct, it is virtually impossible to beat the rates that this integration has delivered. And the reason is when we set it up, we said we want the value being passed along to the users, meaning Remine is one account at the mailing company. And so when an agent creates a piece of mail, for this example, this is 5 pieces of mail. So for less than $1, you get full color letter, envelope, and stamp delivered to a small batch of addresses. We've been told from users that it's virtually impossible to beat that unless you're doing thousands of pieces of mail. The reason I'm harping on that right now is actually because we have a very exciting new integration coming at the request of users. So the carts functionality where you can send out these mailing pieces will now then mirror that with a partnership with a company called Evocalize that will then allow you to create the same type of marketing pieces, but digitally. So whether it's social, retargeting, all of the social or the digital mediums for delivering that content is coming soon, which is very exciting for us. And then the last thing I'd probably want to touch on is that interaction between the agent and the consumer. So both whether you're doing a farming list or you're doing just sending them active information, you can actually select these properties and share a cart, which is a concept that some folks who are not in business with might not be familiar with. But what we're doing here is we're taking our take and interpretation of IDX information. So as you can see, this card has been shared. My customer would receive an email, but when they were to log in and click on a link, they would be in their own instance of Remine. And Remine.com is not a public portal, very important distinction. This is our take on IDX data. You would have to create a login and password, which would tie you and solidify you to that agent who shared the information. And then from here, you can actually do your own deep searches and look on the map and save, and all that information would be shared back with your agent. But in this case, when properties are shared, it's in a very modern and digital experience. So by a customer opening up, they can actually open and see the full listing, and it opens it up and shows you all the IDX information that's being displayed. So this feed is the business rules shared by that MLS. So, in Karen's market, it's the 15 or 16 fields that her leadership has decided are the ones that are compliant and are being showed and surfaced to consumers on any IDX website, whether it's ours, Zillow, or the brokerage, or Realtor.com. But then the consumer can then interact with the agent right here digitally. They can add comments, and then more importantly, they would swipe left, swipe right on the website and the mobile. So one thing that I always like to point out is that the full experience of Remine Pro comes with a companion app. It is not an additional fee. And it's very important to point out that both our iOS product and our Android product were built ground up about a year after the launch of our flagship product. One of the things we were watching for was behavior and usage. And what we see is when people download the app, the usage jumps through the roof because it's now in your daily workflow. And it's very typical workday usages, which people don't think of us for. So for example, if I were to show these 5-6 properties to a customer, I could save that in a cart and not actually have to print anything out. I just share the cart with the customer. It's now in their mobile app and in my mobile app. So when we get to the property, we can both take notes inside of the application. You have a function where the notes are viewed just for yourself, or they're shared notes. So you can actually have a very collaborative way of dealing with the property and taking notes inside of the application. I'll stop right there. I do spend an hour plus doing deep dives of Remine Pro, but I think that's a good taste of what we can talk about for the rest of the time together today, and also some of the functionalities that some folks may have not seen, since unfortunately we haven't had all that face-to-face interaction that we're so used to for multiple times a year at conferences.
Leah, I want to take you back just one step for those. I'm sure many people on the call are very familiar with Remine, but I'm sure there's some that may not be as well. So when you think of Remine, and of course, MLSs all have MLS systems. Some of them have public records. Many of them have showing appointment software. Many of them have their own mobile app, right? Where does Remine fit? Does it satisfy a different type of customer need? Like, are you helping the MLS expand its value proposition?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And historically, we've never launched a Remine application and ripped anything out at that moment of launch. Okay. We had 60 plus installations of Remine, whether it's Pro or Starter, but mostly Pro. And where I think the opportunity lies, it's where boards are looking to make sure that they're keeping up with the times and giving relevant tools. When I have the opportunity to talk to a board, I say we have one very simple mission, which is to keep the agent in the center of the transaction, make them faster, stronger, better, right? One of the things that's happened over the last couple of years, partly and due to these well-funded companies, which is where they're really empowering the consumer, and in a lot of times leaving the agent with tools that aren't as modern. We don't think that the consumer should have all the shiny, bright, powerful objects. We want the agents to have as much data at the fingertips as possible. So one of the things we're very well known for is when we display values, we bring in as many AVMs as possible, right? So as I'm still sharing my screen here, this is one of the features that we build over time. We try to get you as many data points as possible because we believe the agent should have as much information and more as a consumer at their fingertips. So over time, we have seen products sunset other products. So, we're a complete public record solution. So we've seen markets run both of us concurrently, and then over time, as contracts come due, sunset another one. But really, it's being able to serve the two communities, as Tim talks about it quite a bit. So if I'm taking some of his thunder away, I apologize. But when he was at Maris, he said they did an extensive search of their segmentation of their populations, and he breaks it down into 2 buckets, which I like very much, which is your traditionalist, where if you move the color, change the color of the login logo, they're going to get upset, to the modernist, who is really trying to get an edge with technology. And Remine really fits the mold with that modern technologist. One of the things that I hear constantly from MLS partners is when they onboard new agents who've never seen any of our technology, and very importantly to say, new agents to the industry, independent of age, whether they're 30 or 60, and they're just entering the real estate industry, and they sit through an orientation and they see our product versus in any other of the incumbent products, whether it's a public record system or an MLS system. A lot of the feedback, it says ours is familiar and intuitive, right? It feels like Google Maps. It feels like some of the other forms of search in our life, not specific to real estate search. Just, in our search bar, if you start typing, it starts auto-completing, it starts auto-suggesting, right? Is it my name inside of a city, inside of a neighborhood, inside of an address? Am I on title? And the fact that for us, you can actually switch back and forth, unlock additional data sets. So the reason I don't appear in this search is because that's just Bright MLS, but by the click of a button, I unlock the entire US searching capability, and now I appear in the data set in the city I live in. So, it's really adding a element of modern technology that typically wasn't available in other technology stacks.
But what I'm gathering is how does it help realtors? It seems like it's helping them with a much more effective way of doing prospecting through their MLS, because it's all integrated data. Is that a fair way to?
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've enjoyed about having this company is when I am actually across the country and interact with agents. And I can tell you that in multiple parts of the market across, whether you're a buyer's agent, a listing agent, you do 10 deals a year or 200 deals a year. Once you've gotten to know our product, you are convinced it was designed for you and your prototypical behavior, right? I have agents who say, this
Awesome.
is the prospecting tool I've ever shown. I've heard agents, this is the best, showing technology because I can put my carts in this order and go from property to property. And we really give you the full ability to both do property record research really well, which, there's a whole category for that, as well as an alternative front end with a very modern twist to it.
And when you say alternative front end, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so if you have an incumbent system, whether it's Matrix, Paragon, Rapatoni, Flex, and then by offering Remine Pro, you're not offering only the public record solution. It is the full ability to do MLS queries, share it with customers, engage with the customer from the active under contract status side of it. And
you can search, and can you set up a listing in Remine?
You could set up a listing if you have our ad edit product, which is a separate product, which Karen does have and several other markets have. And our ad edit product is very unique in the sense that it just wouldn't populate a Remine database. It can populate any database. So as an example for Karen's market, she's got her own database that she has, but if she were to absorb a smaller MLS with a different front end, that all powers it really well, depending on whether she's integrated the back end. And in other markets that don't have their own database, because that's a pretty sophisticated setup that Karen has, we can add it into a Matrix database and a Paragon database and or a Rapatoni one. And you can actually see where, it's and or, right? Do you want both? Do you want one? Do you want the other one? It really gives you a lot of granularity and control. Gotcha.
So if I decided to use your ad edit and I have Matrix as a front end, it would still populate over there as well. So it's not like an agent has to put it in two places.
No, and actually one step further, if Matrix is still the primary system and we're the alternative front end, we're populating that Matrix database. You can actually turn off that module and be the only input place. And then you can see it on whether it's ours in your data share and MLS, wherever you need to send it.
Got it. Okay. So, you kind of introduced that question. By the way, please throw in your questions here because we've got the experts here, the MLS experts as well as the company experts. So if you've got questions about how this might fit within your marketplace, feel free to throw those in and we'll get them answered for you. But Tim, since we talked about the traditionalist, modernist, can you maybe just talk to us a little bit about that? And how do you see that playing out with MLSs over time? Are we seeing more modernists coming in and less traditionalists happening over time? And how to just tell us more about that concept.
It's really interesting, and thanks to Maris. I know a couple of them are on the call because Maris made the investments to really. First, we started with, I think, 14 profiles, right? So if you think of like Sam, the multi-office broker owner, or Jane, the independent brokerage, or Sally, the selling agent. We had all these different metrics, likes, dislikes, habits about each one of those. And when we really started to analyze and dig in, we were wanting to use them sort of in the boardroom so that when we made decisions, we could identify with the end users and decide who's this decision for, who's it benefit. And what we realized is that it was just too many variances, too many different profiles. So we boiled it down to those two buckets, the traditionalist and the modernist. And that really comes through, if you've ever done a survey at your MLS and you start reading the typed answers, if you give them a free form block to type in, you can really break down the modernist versus the traditionalist and how they phrase things, right? So a traditionalist might say something like, I hate change. And I'm being very brief when I say that. Sure. But what they really, when you dig into it, what they're really saying is, I don't mind change. I just want it to be slow and incremental to the products I already know, love, and use. Right. So that to me is that traditionalist person. Mm-hmm. The modernist is the person that is saying things like, everything that you guys have looks like it was built 10 years ago. Can you just change it all? I just want it to work. I want it to be mobile. And I want things to talk to each other. That's a modernist, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that Remine really, to me, that's the growing segment, right? So as we look at and analyze those people, yes, the largest segment is still the traditionalist. They're probably, and I'm making this up, somewhere between 60 and 70%, depending on your MLS of your population. However, most people today, Marilyn, whether they're you, me, or Leo, or Karen, we're starting to get very used to all of our technology changing pretty rapidly, especially since every company in the world drives to like scrums and 2-week sprints, and they're constantly publishing updates. So I think that the modernist is the one that's changing more rapidly. They're the growing population, and it has nothing to do with age as much as it does to the comfort level of how quickly your technology can change.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So we have 2 questions that I'm sure Tim would be happy to answer. The first one is, I'm new to Remine. It's offered by my MLS. Is there any additional charge for me to use the Pro version, or is that included?
It depends on what MLS you're at. So out of the 64 current customers, I think we're down to 9 MLSs that have what we call the starter version, which we don't sell anymore. That's the version that requires you to pay for an upgrade. So depending on your MLS, feel free to shoot me an email. I think my email address is at the very last slide, and I'll look you up and see if you have to pay for Pro or not. So out of the 64, though, only 9 have to pay to upgrade right now. And, I might as well go ahead and say on a nationally broadcast feed here that we're likely to make the change and not have any starter accounts in the near future. So if you're one of those starter accounts, you might want to start talking to me or thinking about what you'll do if and when Remine starts to move in that direction.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Karen, let's turn over to you now, one of our fearless leaders in the MLS space. Why don't you just give us a little backdrop on Realcomp first, like just, the size of your business and, what kinds of technologies that you offer, and then we can jump into Remine specifically.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Realcomp is the largest MLS in Michigan. We have just under 18,000 subscribers in Realcomp. We cover all of Southeast Michigan and up into our thumb area of our mitten. And then we have data share agreements that take us all the way through the lower half of Michigan. We're not up in the UP yet, but we cover just about all of the lower peninsula, a little bit at the top in the northern areas that we don't share with yet. So we've been in business since 1994. And as a regional MLS, we offer, right now we're on a matrix system. We've been on matrix for, 10, 12 years. And, it's worked well for us. We offer probably the same things that most other MLSs offer. We have showing time. We have cloud MLS products. We have other CMAs that people can purchase on their own to link to us. We never turn anybody away. They need a data feed. We're here to give them a feed and make their products work. And we're always looking for the newest and best. And it's not difficult, or pardon me, it is difficult sometimes when you're making those transitions, but we know that's what we have to do in order to stay competitive and stay in business.
Gotcha. So, what inspired you and your board to look at Remine, and ultimately what kind of customer opportunities are you providing by offering Remine?
Well, we first looked at Remine in 2016, and there was a lot of excitement about it mainly because of the data mining. That was a big term back then. access to that additional data. And our board was very excited about it and decided to move forward. And we installed it in 2017. At that point, we were really pushing hard for, we wanted a search that could bring back results for public record data and MLS data combined. We wanted to catch all of those for sale by owners in one search. We had asked so many vendors to be able to provide that for us, and they all thought it was a good idea, but nobody came forth and said, here it is, we're ready for you. And when we talked to Jonathan and Leo from Remine and said, we really think this is a great thing, you ought to look at this. They came back and said, yep, we can do this for you. But that then prompted us to say, but we need better public record data. The public record data we have is good, but it's not great. It's slow, it's late. We need you to do a better job for us. So we then contracted for that piece of it as well. And they began collecting data for us throughout the state. Michigan is very strange in that we have 2 tax seasons. So you have to collect taxes twice a year, not just once. And so that made that search even better. And that was one of the first things that drew our customers to the Remine search, was to be able to come back with a CMA that produced listings that were both for sale by owner or just not in the MLS at all, and those that were in the MLS. And that was when it really started to take off for us.
Gotcha. Okay. Now I'm going to jump back to something Leo mentioned a minute ago. He said that you guys have built your own database. Can you explain that to the non-technical people, which I know you and I are? What does that mean?
It's the only way I can explain it.
Right? How is that helpful? And then I guess, and maybe Leo, you could jump in on this too. How does Remine support the fact that you decided to build your own database?
Well, we started looking at this probably about 2.5 or 3 years ago, just really looking at what would it mean for us. And, right now with the matrix system, the data all the MLS data that comes in sits at CoreLogic. And so when we would say, well, we'd like to do this with the data, well, you're going through a third party, and you start thinking that doesn't make a lot of sense. This is the data from our subscribers, our customers. It's not that we had trouble getting it. It just didn't make sense to go through another place to have to get that. So we began to look at what would it be like for us to bring that in-house. The control would be better, the flexibility would be better. Well, then you take into consideration all the buying and selling of companies out there, and people started getting a little nervous and saying, how are you going to secure this data for us? We need that as well. Okay. So we said the best way to do that is to bring it in. And in order to be able to offer the flexibility we wanted with our own database, we needed some standalone systems that could work with other things that were out there, like Remine. Remine said, we've got a standalone docs transaction management platform that you'll be able to use with your database. So it could speak directly to what we were putting together. And that goes hand in hand with Add Edit. So now when we move to Add Edit, which we're in the testing phase right now, when we move to that, which we're looking at in just a month or so, then when the data comes in, it'll come in through Remine into our back end, and then we can push it out to Remine. We can push it out to Matrix. We can push it out to other front ends that we want to add, and give that flexibility to our customers that we didn't have before.
That's awesome. And that was built internally, your database?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Gotcha. Okay, good. And would you be willing to talk to any other MLSs that may want to talk about the value of having that? Because I know we talked about this yesterday. A lot of MLSs are considering this idea, and they're not quite sure how to do it or where to start or things like that.
Sure, and I would be happy to put them with our IT person who could really tell them how to do that, instead of me just sitting here saying, this is great, we love doing this, and here's why we're doing it.
Right.
Yeah, we would be happy to share any information we've learned, because we have learned a lot. It is not an easy task. It is not an easy task.
So in your case, did Remine Pro replace something, or did you add it into the mix?
It was an addition to. It was kind of like our first step into that second front end.
Okay.
Because it could stand alone, it could stand on its own. It didn't take a lot for us to plug it in and make it available for our customers. So it didn't really replace anything. Eventually, we replaced our in-house public record data. We have public record data from 2 sources, and we replaced our own in-house public record data with the data that Remine provided. So that did replace something, but Remine Pro was in addition to, and it was an added benefit to our customers.
Gotcha. And are you seeing, can you tell right now, as you call it, 2 different front ends, are you seeing some customers going to one system versus Remine, and then, or are they using both? Or do you have any sense of kind of how that, going back to Tim's idea of the modernist traditionalist, do you see it people, certain types of people going to one versus the other, or is it kind of all over the place?
I think the newer agent on the scene who comes in and says, okay, what do you have that's exciting? And those are the ones that we see, kind of the same definition that Tim gave. Those are the people that we see saying, this looks great. I want to try this. I want, let me see what it has to offer. Those that are very accustomed to what, when you have an MLS system in place for 7-10 years, it is a very hard transition to make to something new, very hard.
Right.
So we're seeing an increase in usage for Remine Pro because they're coming through Remine Pro now for Docs Plus for the transaction management. So we did see an increase. Because that's how and we'll see it again because they're going to come in that way for add edit. And that'll be the only way that they can add lists. Our customers can add listings is through the Remine add edit platform. So I'm sure we're going to see a very large increase in usage.
That's awesome. So do you get a sense from, we hear a lot from brokers that they like choice because they like to make their own decisions about which systems make sense for their business. Are you getting any good kudos back from the broker saying, thank you for giving us more than one option?
We get some. What I have found interesting, and I've been doing this for a very long time, when you give the majority of agents choice, they're going to pick up the phone and call us and say, but what one should I use? They're still going to ask us what they should do because they just want us to, to help them through that process. So we are getting some brokers who say this is great. We love the additional feedback, but a lot of people still want us to help them decide what they should use.
Gotcha. I assume you offer training for both systems, so then they can go through that and figure it out too.
We do. One of our lead trainers is probably Remine biggest fan, and they have she is just on fire for it, and she'll bring them in and get them using that thing in no time flat, and she does an awesome job. So we offer training for all of the products that we provide.
That kind of leads to my next question. There isn't an MLS on the call that doesn't struggle with getting adoption of tools. Just nobody's ever satisfied with the number of people that use something. What kinds of things have you done to build the awareness for it and to get people excited about using it?
Oh, your timing for this one's perfect. Well, earlier this year, we rolled out Docs Plus, and we had been using another transaction management platform for several years. So this, again, was one of those really hard transitions because everybody was used to doing it one way for a long time. And as we're still working our way through that, we're watching the process thinking, boy, there's some things we could have done a lot better. And so one of the first couple of things we're doing is we have some brokers that are really excited about Remine. They're really excited about what it offers. So we're going directly to them and saying, great, tell us what you like about it. Help us to help the other people out there. Show you from a user point, you show us what's good about it. And that's what we're going to focus on. But then of course we had the people that say, this is so hard, I don't want to do this. So we're also bringing them in to say, tell us where you're struggling. Show us where you're having a problem so we can focus on those points. Instead of us saying, just do this, we can really focus on where they're having a problem. And the other thing that we're learning in the communication part is short, and I know everybody knows this, but just those short videos. Here's how you upload a document. Here's how you add a listing. Just a short, 1 or 2 minute video that focuses on that one part of it that they can watch when they need it. And that has been extremely helpful for us.
That's awesome. Those are all really good ideas. Now, you've mentioned, and all of you have mentioned, maybe Tim, you can clarify. It sounds like there's a lot of different things that Remine's offering. There's Remine Pro, and then I've heard Add Edit, I've heard Docs Plus. Can you just kind of tell us about those different I don't know if you call them modules or products, but just explain kind of how those work, Tim.
Yeah, and we call them modules, but it's microservices, right? So if you think of the traditional MLS system is very monolithic, right? It's everything sort of in one vertical tech stack. What Remine's done that I think is a little more unique, and I think most other vendors are starting to move this way, is to break that whole monolith into microservices, launching Pro first, which, Pro I would categorize really briefly as search, display, CMA, client interaction.
Okay.
Then we add a product like Add Edit, listing input management, right? Submit a listings, invite photographers, do really cool integrations at the front end as you're adding listings, like marketing integration, stuff like that. So multi-MLS submission, open an API up so that brokers can build their own Add Edit to submit listings via business rules. That's Add Edit in a nutshell. We then have single sign-on, which is, I think it's probably was the first competitor for an Sso Dashboard to Clarity. Now you've got one popping up with MMSI. I think Rapatoni's got one out there, so maybe there's another, but our Sso Dashboard, really the unique flavor there is that we allow the MLS to enable, if they're a regional MLS, they can enable associations to create association branded dashboards. Okay. And they can also choose to enable brokers to create broker branded dashboards. And each step down, those organizations can add their own tools. So you could have Leo was a KW agent, so using KW, a KW agent could have a KW themed dashboard with all their MLS tools at the top, and then they could see their brokerage tools like KW Command, or maybe they use broker metrics or something like that, and they can add those SSO partners in at will. So that's our SSO. The next product that I'm forgetting is probably Docs Plus, our full TM, which we've mentioned a few times. I think it's a really slick thing. I actually sat on .loop's advisory board for probably, 10 years or more. And when I saw Docs Plus, it's the only other product I've seen that comes close and actually I think exceeds it. But the eye is it's the eye of the beholder, I guess. But it's a full TM platform. It even has brokerage compliance built into it, so you don't have to go pay for an upgrade after the MLS license. It's everything: digital signature, forms, compliance, all of it. Those are our flagship products. But then we have an API. So think Trestle, think Bridge. We have the Remine API. We have a consumer-facing website. And we also sell database as a module, as a service. So if you want to do what Karen's doing, but you don't want to take a bite all at once, you can actually license just the database application to run multi-front ends off of.
So I was going to ask that question. So if someone liked any one of the things that you just mentioned, the SSO or the Docs Plus, can they buy those individually, or do they have to have Remine Pro and that add on to it?
So the 4 flagships, SSO, Docs Plus, Pro, and Add Edit, those can all be sold independently.
Okay.
It's a little more difficult to just sell an API service. Typically, you've got to have Pro to get the API. Not that it's I'll go ahead and say it's a requirement, because we do all the data mapping with the Pro integration, right? Or if you want a consumer-facing website, well, we need the consumer ties that Leo showed off in the Pro in order to pull off that website. So those products are dependent upon other products, but the 4 flagship are all standalone, individually licensed.
Okay, so if it's budget time, which it is at most MLSs right now, and you're interested in any one of those, they can get quotes on each one of them separately if they so choose.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of having in modules, right, and selling them separately, is if you're in a situation politically where you have 2 MLSs side by side, and you've tried to merge for the last 20 years and it's just never going to happen, but they want to do something together, a joint add edit system where you can have one listing entry that sends it to both MLSs. That's the beauty of being able to strategically take a piece or a part and say, I don't have to do a full MLS system replacement. I can just replace this piece and it offers these benefits.
Got it. Now, Karen, it sounded like a lot of your motivation for joining, at least initially, was you were looking for a better public record solution, and then a whole bunch came with that, obviously. But Leo and Tim, what do you see are some of the other motivations with MLSs around the country that Karen, that some may be like Karen, but are there other things that are driving MLSs toward wanting to use Remine Pro?
Leo, I'll go first, and you can fill in if you need be. I think It depends on what the MLS needs, right? If you need a public record system, great, we can be a public record system.
Okay.
Prospecting, we've been utilized heavily because we were born from prospecting, right? Leo touched on it, but that ability to say, show me all the homes in this area that have a high mortgage rate, more than $200,000 in equity, and they've owned the home for 7 to 15 years. That's a great way to build those targeted prospecting lists for brokers. So we're utilized in that way a lot. Other MLSs utilize us as a MLS front-ended choice, really picking up on that theme of traditional versus modern. So we get utilized for different reasons by different MLSs.
Gotcha. By the way, anybody that's got questions in the audience, feel free to throw them in there because we've got some great people to answer them for you. So we at WAV Group just published a study just about a week ago about interoperability. And it's a big theme with brokers and with MLSs, and it's kind of a buzzy word, but the point is brokers get frustrated because they take one piece of data and they enter it again and again and again and again and again in a variety of different systems. And sometimes not just in residential, but then they have mortgage or title or insurance or plumbing or whatever. And it becomes very, very complicated and very expensive and very inefficient. Does Remine Pro help at all with that? Helping the MLS help the broker with those kinds of issues?
Yeah, I'll take this one, Marilyn. So Remine Pro is search and display. So if we're not the ad edit, then we behave just as one more system that reads. But
Okay.
To a point about our ad edit, which is now going to be available to Karen's agents and brokers, that is very exciting for folks that we've been talking to across the country, is that our entire ad edit module is also an API. So the user UI experience that Karen's agents are going to see, that's modern and flows easier visually, but that's also built on an entire API structure. So if she's got either local independents who are very tech forward and have spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars building their own backend that keeps their agents in their own native system, we're the first that I know of, and if I'm speaking out of turn, please feel free to correct me if there's another ad edit technology that does that will allow you to ingest the data, being the MLS database, run your business rules, and never have to log in to any system again. So, again, I'll restate that in case it was a little confusing, but let's say you are either Keller Williams, Compass, EXP, Remax, all these companies that are now very heavily investing in technology, and they actually have a cradle to grave system where their agents can do their work.
Right.
And they have a button that says push to MLS. If you're in Karen's market, we have an open API that they can write to without calling Karen or calling me. We will run Karen's business rules against it. And that listing will be inputted from, ABC Broker's technology into Karen's proprietary database on the back end, and then be able to be read by Matrix, Remine, Paragon, and some of the smaller acquisitions Karen's done in their outlying markets. And that's something that I don't think anyone's doing, which when it comes to interoperability, that's like the bee's knees of it, right? It's the best way to do it, because I like the traditionalist and modernist example. I think as an MLS, Karen and her cohort have that same dilemma of people to serve, right? You have the traditionalist broker who believe local expertise, being well known in the community. And then the other ones who are like, no, we're tech companies. And she needs to provide technology to both.
Exactly.
And what Suite allows to do very well, it's, the ones that aren't going to build their software, we spend a lot of time on UX and UI and having a modern feel for search graphically, in the way we do search. But then for the folks who are like, that's cute, I spent 10 million bucks, I just want an API. I never actually wanted to log into Remine or Matrix. I think you're both stupid. I just want to do it in my own system. You can actually push data directly into Karen's database and never have to log into any of us ever again.
And I believe we will have somebody doing that. We will have, one of our largest customers is already working with us to be able to do that, Marilyn.
That's so cool. Because that's exactly where I think MLSs need to go. Is you can't treat it just like you can't treat every agent the same. You clearly cannot treat brokerages the same either. And with so much money coming into this industry, there's more and more of the just give me the API and get out of the way type people coming in, right?
Right.
So it's awesome. But once I do that ad edit, though, let's say I'm not quite a Compass or I'm not quite a Keller Williams yet.
I'll say that, Marilyn,
Yeah.
all the brokers that are live in the country that we're talking to aren't the big ones. It's the local incumbents who are tech forward, who actually have people ready to write to our API. It's not the biggest, the ones that make the most noise about it. It's almost the local incumbent that knows the market really well and has spent a bunch of money either creating like a custom Salesforce or Microsoft.
Got it. So yeah, so that's really neat that it's just another way. Yes, the technology is great. Yes, the functionality is great. But if we all know that at the end of the day, an MLS at its heart is a data services provider, right?
Right.
So if you can help a Karen and all of her colleagues become more flexible, more nimble, more adaptable, more and help each broker ingest data in the way that they want to ingest data, that's really, really powerful. It's really cool. Good stuff, guys. I love that. We're getting a little data geeky, but we do that. It's kind of who we all are, so that's okay. Let's see, what else do I want to ask you guys? So Karen, I'll ask you this one, because you had to do this, and I know you have a very thoughtful board, just like many people do. Did you have any issues? Did you have any pushback where they said, really, Karen, why do we need another MLS system? Why do we need a front end of choice? Like, why does this matter? Why should we care? Why are we spending more money? Did you get that kind of the people that just didn't get it? And if so, how did you get them through it?
I didn't get that. What I got was, this is way beyond anything we've ever seen before when we first looked at it.
Okay.
The access to phone numbers and email and so forth. I think that there was a little bit of fear that it maybe was too much.
Okay.
And so we did see that, but there were more on the side of, this is great. It's going to give us access to exactly what we need to be able to increase our business. So I didn't get a lot of pushback on why do we need another one, because the way it was presented to them was different than what they already had.
Okay,
There was a lot more to it than what they already had. So they didn't really look at it as in addition to. It was it was in addition to, but it was beyond what they had access to.
Got it. So they saw it as sort of next gen as opposed to side by side.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And Tim, are you guys working with MLSs of all sizes, from the very small ones? Obviously, I know you're working with many of the very large ones like Karen, but is this something that's affordable and doable for someone that's maybe sub 1,000 members?
It is, but I'll also caveat that to say, the economics get a little harder when you get below 1,000 members, because at that point we're a little more costly. We're certainly not MLS system replacement costly, which, by the way, we can be a full MLS system replacement, but everything scales with size. It's an unfortunate thing, but it's absolutely true. It's why you get scales of economy. So I think our smallest customer currently is just above 500 members. So we can scale down, but you should be prepared to, pay what it costs for really good technology to scale it down that small.
Okay, got it. All right, so I guess I'll just ask you, Karen, and just in general, as you said, you've learned a lot through this process. I'm sure every time you roll out a new product, you learn things, but what advice would you give to, if there's folks from MLS committees on the call or MLS executives on the call, what advice would you give them if they're thinking about becoming a partner with Remine Pro?
Well, I think you have to really look at what is it you're looking to offer. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to come to the table with something that's beyond what they have access to in the traditional systems that are out there? Because that's really what attracted us to the Remine products in the first place. And then for me, it's become even more important, the relationship side of things. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and now those relationships you have with your vendors that I also look at as partners, those relationships become very, very important. There has to be a very high level of trust, and there has to be a great respect going back and forth. You got to work well together. And that was made really easy for us. Working with Leo and working with Jonathan and now Tim, we've been able to accomplish a lot. And so I think that plays a big role too. But then you also have to look at what do your customers want?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes though, Marilyn, they don't know what they want because they don't know what's available.
Correct.
So, you know, we have the kind of funny, not funny thing of we're going to take you into the next level of technology, kicking and screaming, because that's sometimes what it seems like. But when they get there, most times they're happy that we did that, and that hasn't changed for many years. So again, you have to look at what they're looking for, what do they want, and who's the best one to provide it, and then beyond that, look at how can you build the relationships with your vendor partners.
Okay, so
of course, cost. You got to look at cost.
Of course. So Tim and Leo, block your ears for a minute. Karen, I want
Yes.
you to give us the cold hard truth about what it's like to work with Remine, because like every company, I don't know, are we just bigger gossips in real estate than other real industries? I don't know, but I feel like there's a lot of gossip about every company out there that MLS work with. So
Yeah.
tell us the straight scoop, you know, not just Leo and Jonathan, obviously they're the, you know, the big cheeses, but the day-to-day of actually executing this stuff. If you make a suggested change, you know, how does it all work? Just tell us the cold hard truth. Sorry, guys. Hope it's all good.
Well, again, because we're right in the heart of this, we're wrapping up our transition to Docs Plus, and now we're working on testing for edit. We at Realcomp have a very long time reputation of we want it the way we want it, and we're not going to settle for anything less, probably like every other MLS out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, we're also in a position that we know we have to be smart about it. You have to compromise sometimes. And I mean this sincerely, I have never had a conversation where I said, look, I need this. You are going to have to figure out a way to provide this. It's an integral part of what we're doing. I need this change. I've never had a no. I've had here's how we can do it. Maybe not quite the way you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's going to add a little time to the transition. I've never ever had a no, and I mean that sincerely, because I would tell you, you know, I would.
No, you would.
I would
That's why I
tell
asked the
you if I
question.
had. But again, when you've been doing it as long as we have, those relationships are so critical, and so, you know, somebody said, you know, Jonathan answers my calls at 8 o'clock at night. I said, no, he answers my calls at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, because that's usually when we catch up on what's going on before the day starts. I've just never had an issue where things didn't get addressed. Not necessarily exactly the way I want it, but
Okay.
it does get addressed.
All right, that's good to hear. And see, Tim, I couldn't ask you that question because you'd be a little biased, but that's okay.
I'm just glad you invited Karen onto this instead of say Jeff Bosch. He'd have probably backed a bus up over me by now.
Hey, Jeff, we hear you on here. All right. So let's see. Does anybody else have any questions from the audience before I come in on my couple of final ones? I don't see anything else coming in. Guys, jump in here if you've got any questions about this, because it's a very exciting but complicated collection of tools. So if you have anything else you want to know, but so I guess, well, let me ask one question. I think I know the answer to this, but let me just be sure. I guess I'll ask you this, Tim. So, and it sounds like Karen's doing this. So I can start this as a continuum. So if I said I wanted to have Docs Plus first, then I could still buy Remine Pro at another time or buy the dashboard at another time. I can buy them like in a cadence that it makes sense for me as a MLS.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have several customers that just have Docs right now, and obviously Pro's our largest adopted because it was our first product out, but
right.
Yep, you can absolutely just buy it in pieces and parts and replace it as it makes sense to you.
So it's probably, you know, this is Marilyn as WAV Group speaking for a minute, but I always want to give advice to every MLS that, you know, at least on an annual basis, you should be looking at every tool that you offer. You know, if you've got a dashboard, look at their dashboard. If you've got a Docs, another kind of transaction management solution, look at this one. Like you may not know what you don't know. And the other thing I would say is, and we work a lot with brokerages, and we're hearing more and more and more. And I won't mention the one deal, but we all know which one it is that happened or is trying to happen, where brokers don't want just one choice, right? They don't want to be, quote, stuck with one, even if they love that product, even if their agents love that product. if for some reason there's a strategic shift in who owns it, how they control it, what they're focused on, how their business model works, whatever, a lot of things can change, right? They're looking for flexibility. So if you haven't started to think like that, I would definitely recommend you talk to some of your brokers around that, because that's what we're hearing a lot. And I guess I'll ask the tough question while I brought that topic up. Leo and Tim, everybody wants to know who's the next one that's going to get sold. Can you tell us
I was
anything?
talking to Victor yesterday. He said he might put in an offer, Marilyn. I mean, I don't know what to tell anybody when they ask that question. Look, if CoreLogic can be bought,
right?
In this MLS, let's just take the MLS vision.
Right.
Every company you work with can be bought and sold. It's a matter of the motivations of the company, their goals, who they value, what relationships they value, where another company's strategic direction is going, what their boards are thinking. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know who will buy us. I mean, could we be bought? Sure. Could anybody be bought? Absolutely. What I can tell you is that I'm happy to be at Remine. I mean, I chose to be here because when they let go of their sales staff, I was in really tight communications with them. And I know that was a painful transition for Remine to watch that many valued staff members go away and to really shift their strategic direction to saying the MLS is our North Star. We're no longer selling direct to agents and brokers. So, you know, if it's any consolation, all of our conversations, all of our strategies revolve around the MLS being our North Star and the MLSs being our customers. Now, when we're developing software and products, agent usability, those things are North Stars, but you get the point.
Yeah, I do for sure. And I guess just to that point, and you know, Karen talked about one way to sort of protect the security of her information and her market by having their own database. When you guys are considering, again, I know I was kidding. I know none of us can say we're all for sale, right? That's for sure. Any company with the right price is for sale. But do you do things that help ensure a smooth transition and or to make sure that people can still feel comfortable their data is being protected in the way that they believe it should be protected?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of people on this call that remember the Inman article that came out that talked about the security breach Remine had a year and a half ago. And not to bring up, you know, historically bad news, but because of that, you could say we overreacted. We have the highest security rating of anybody in the MLS space. It's posted on our website. You can link to it. You can find out all the things we had to go through to secure the data in such a way that hopefully that will never happen to us again. So we do protect it. We also, since we license a database product, while we've never had anybody take us up on we've talked to several MLSs about what it would look like if they were able to own that in perpetuity. So if they ever did sever the relationship with us, could they just pick up and continue to service that same database instance? And our response has always been, we're open to it.
Okay, good.
And you can have your data whenever you want. We don't contractually restrict you to 3 copies of your database within 1 3-year contract. If you want a copy, get a copy. We'll give you access and you can download it and use it wherever you want. It's your data. Great.
Yeah, it's your data piece. I think that's what people really are interested in. And some people are being even more proactive like Karen, but that's really the key. That's what I think brokers get worried about. It's not so much the ownership, it's what the data that's in that tool is going to be used for and how it's going to be manipulated in ways that they never anticipated through, you know, creating other products or things like that. So it's good to hear that you guys are, you know, careful to protect that, because that's really I think at the end of the day, it's not so much who owns it, it's what are you going to do with it? So that's really helpful. Okay, so we just got about another minute or so here. So maybe I'll give each of you just 30 seconds or so. Tell us from your perspective, why you believe that each MLS should offer Remine Pro. You can each do a little pitch. Go for it. Leo, you want to go first?
We started the company to make our own lives better, and that hasn't really changed. I'm still primarily the one that talks to agents, and I think that that's when we click. Look, I sold close to 4,000 homes before building software, and I was just frustrated that I had to go to 10 different places to do it. If it could be on one browser or in my phone. Some of my favorite anecdotes is when an agent comes up to me at a conference and says, when I pull up the Remine app on my phone, you make me look smarter and more market savvy in every house I'm in. We look at the house and I can say, well, the neighbor bought that one 2 years ago and that one's free and clear. And that one, you know, is owned by a trust out of state. Maybe I should reach out to them for you. You make me look like the neighborhood expert everywhere I go.
That's awesome. Okay, I'll go to Tim and then I'll let you bring us home, Karen. Go ahead, Tim. 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, I'm much more simple. I just say that the modernist MLS user needs tools too. So while I think Remine coming on the stage has caused a few of our competitors to react and up their game, I'm super happy to see that as an MLS fan. But we're just going to continue to keep pushing those boundaries and hopefully setting the pace there. So the modernists need some love.
Perfect. Okay, Karen?
Well, I'm going to touch on again the security side of it, because that's what one of the pieces that Remine brought to us that's so important. Agents of all ages, of all areas of expertise have said to me, why are we making these changes? And when I explain that security of that data is one of our most important objectives right now, they are quick to say, perfect, thank you for doing that. We need that. And that's what these products offer us. So, you know, it's definitely why we keep looking at them.
That's great. So if you see on the page there, there's info.remine.com if you want to learn more about this, or you can reach out to Tim directly. There have been a few questions about training through our webinar. Is there a training website that we can send people to, Tim?
You can go to info.remine.com and click on our support center, and there's tons of training videos. We also do webinars, and most local MLSs do their own training. So if you need help finding the resources though, just shoot me an email.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks guys. This has been really exciting. I love to see companies continue to push the envelope and help MLSs get smarter and smarter. And I love that idea of the traditionalist, modernist, because there really are so many different, it's so hard as an MLS to satisfy the needs of all those different groups. And Leo, the things that you mentioned about satisfying the data distribution and transportation needs of different types of brokers, that's awesome to address as well. So thanks everybody. Again, if you need more information, it's info.remine.com or reach out to Tim at tdain@remine.com. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.